Welcome to Bearwood, a spectacular building with an extraordinary history. The mansion has lived countless lives and can tell a million stories. In this series, we will bring these tales to life and uncover pockets of time from Bearwood's past. Each episode will begin using a photo of Bearwood chosen by students here at REDDAM'S House. Welcome to a very windy balcony overlooking South Terrace. In this episode, we're going to be focusing on Bearwood in the First World War. Now, in the years before the war, the Walters were trying to sell off their 7,000-acre estate. However, there were no takers for the mansion. So when the war arrived, then the Walters allowed a country house to be transformed into a Canadian convalescent hospital. The Bearwood Park Hospital opened on September the 20th, 1915 as a place for soldiers to rest and recuperate before returning to the front line. Over the course of the war, 21,000 soldiers would pass through Bearwood. And you may have noticed in that last photo, there's a building or a structure on South Terrace which is no longer there. So, what was it? This was the Canadian Red Cross Society hut. It provided entertainment, usually by the local branch of the Reading YMCA, to all of the soldiers convalescing here at Bearwood. Now, inside, there was a large stage with seating for over 400, and it was in constant use 5 days every week. The numbers are very impressive. In just one 20-month spell, there were 126 concerts, 125 picture shows, 36 dramatic performances, 27 illustrated lectures, and much more. In the first 5 months of 1918, a total of 25,040 people attended across 53 concerts. A fascinating account has survived from E.R. Wertebet, a woman who lectured at Bearwood in the war and wrote about her experience. The mansion was described to her as a castle, and she recalls being taken through many stately corridors to this YMCA hut. Her chauffeur, who had driven hundreds of lecturers to Bearwood before, but never a woman, was impressed. "Your lecture was head and shoulders better than any man's," he said. After the lecture, E.R. Wertebet was driven back to the station, and eventually, following an air raid en route to Paddington, she arrived home. She only visited Bearwood once, but her memory of the place is magnificent. And who better to bring these reflections to life than Harriet Walter?
I got to bed, gave one last look at Bearwood in its glorious surroundings. I saw the moon shining on the hills and the lake, where fairy princesses and princes played hide-and-seek among the water lilies, the sisters hovering about like angels among their heroic patients. The chauffeur was flying with a white-haired lady in a balloon, and I slept and dreamt of justice and honour, of victory and peace.
From just that short extract, you get a sense that Bearwood really was a place of refuge and escapism away from the horrors of war. And the Walter family were more than happy to oblige. In the summer of 1915, John Walter V, yes, fifth, the last Walter to own Bearwood, loaned Bearwood to the Canadians free of charge. All they had to do was pay the bills, pay the rent, and make sure they left the building as they found it. When John Walter V returned from British propaganda work in Spain in 1918, he felt a deep sense of gratitude at having the opportunity to use his mansion for such magnificent work. This is a photo of the Duke of Connaught's visit to the soldiers here at Bearwood in the First World War. Now, yes, he was Queen Victoria's son, but I'm more interested in the other people in this image. Because to get a further sense of the goodwill between the Walters and the Canadians, you need to read a letter written by the commanding officer, Robert Elmer Wodehouse, on the right, to Henrietta Maria Walter, John Walter V's mother, on the left. And here's the letter, read by Henrietta's great-granddaughter, Harriet.
Canadian Convalescent Hospital, Bearwood, Wokingham, Berks, June the 17th, 1919. To Mrs. Arthur Walter, 35 Courtfield Gardens, London, SW5. My dear Mrs. Walter, it may interest you to know that upon closing the hospital in March, we've had over 21,000 patients at Bearwood. We had at the opening of the hospital a certain allotment of socks for use of the patients to replace those worn out or damaged in the laundry. I've just been informed by the quartermaster that this unit has never required a replenishment of its original issue during a period of 3.5 years. He states this is due to the constant mending and darning undertaken by you and your work party, thanks to which 11,926 unserviceable socks have been made wearable. I feel you should know this, and also what a unique record your efforts have afforded this unit in this particular item. I venture to say it is the only hospital in which the supply of socks for laundry exchange has not been replenished with additional issues from Canadian Ordnance. I am very grateful to you. Very sincerely yours, R.E. Wodehouse, Lieutenant Colonel, Officer Commanding Canadian Convalescent Hospital.
As well as entertainment, sport was crucial to life at Bearwood in World War I, which allowed soldiers to recuperate and, at the same time, enjoy the likes of athletics, tennis, cricket, and even swimming and boating on the lake. However, it is football that tells the most remarkable story. The Bearwood Canadian football team had one extraordinary season. They won 25 out of 30 games and owed a lot of their enthusiasm to one man. Reverend Major Bailey, the vicar of Bearwood and chaplain to the hospital, played himself as centre forward. It is reported that he scored around 100 goals, including 10 against the Royal Flying Corps and 7 against Farnborough. It gets better. In one match, the Bearwood Canadians fielded Alfred Spouncer, the famous Notts Forest and England international forward, at inside left. He scored a fine goal. Incredibly, 5 years after playing for the Bearwood Canadians, Spouncer had one season as manager of Barcelona. As a manager, Alfred Spouncer's playing style was to keep the ball on the ground. According to Rory Smith, this philosophy could easily have been written by future Barcelona managers, including Johan Cruyff and Pep Guardiola. Reverend Major Bailey, the vicar across the road at St Catherine's, who spearheaded the Bearwood Canadian football team, actually organised the Canadian football team that competed in the Inter-Allied Games of 1919. These military Olympics were set up by the YMCA as part of demobilisation, and some of the soldiers who passed through Bearwood featured for Team Canada, including Alfred Spouncer. They lost 5-4 to the USA, 5-2 to Belgium, and 3-2 to Czechoslovakia, who beat France in the final. As an anecdote, Bailey's involvement, both as hospital chaplain and the organiser of Team Canada, demonstrates that Bearwood really was a convalescent hospital, rather than a place for life and death medical procedures. And the soldiers recuperating here, who were both physically and, no doubt, mentally scarred, were indebted to a dedicated team of staff and nurses. After the war, Bearwood's use changed again as it became the new home of the Royal Merchant Seamen's Orphanage. In the next episode, we're going to find out a little bit more about the orphanage school and explore what life would have been like at Bearwood in the Second World War. But before we do, we must recognise that however much of a haven the Canadian Convalescent Hospital at Bearwood might have been, the tragedy of the First World War is inescapable. And across the road at St Catherine's, here are buried, along with local men, 7 Canadian soldiers who lost their lives.